I'm Chuck Carlton of Dallas Morning News. We're here with Texas football coach Tom Herman, who's headed into his fourth season. Fingers crossed that we have a season uh, at Texas, and is taking time to join us, and probably one of seven Zoom conferences that he's doing today. And first, appreciate your time on this, Tom. And I guess the obvious question that you're getting every time you do one of these is, what has a spring without football been like? I mean, I know you're doing as much as you can with your staff, with your players, but not being out on the field, not going through kind of the ritual of spring practice, not having all the things you associate with. What's that been like for you?
Well, but before we start, Chuck, I just want to make sure you and your family, everybody's safe and healthy, and you guys are doing okay during all of this craziness.
No, thanks for asking, and I assume you and your family are holding up.
Okay. Yeah, we are. In fact, that one of the silver linings in all of this is, as I've told people before, has been, for a coach, is the added family time that I get. I mean, this is now I've sat in front of Zoom meetings from 6:30 a.m. till 7 p.m. I mean, I feel like sometimes I'm working longer hours in the off season than in a normal year, but at least on the weekends, we've got some free time. But that wasn't your question. Your question was about, how are we dealing with spring, an off season without spring practice and without the normalcy of everything. And we're doing as good as I think as good as anybody in the country. Our kids are all working out. We have or had, Zoom meetings, 8 hours a week with our players for installation. The one thing people may not realize is, we got a lot of work done in January and February too. The NCAA has relaxed a lot of the rules over the last 10 or so years of what we can do as coaches with our players there in the off season. So we had 2 hours of meeting every week, which we maximized. We had position-specific conditioning drills, so our kids have been coached by their position coaches multiple times a week for 2 months. And just a couple years ago, they allowed us to have walkthroughs. So our players have walked through all of the base concepts. Now, the one thing that we're missing is obviously the spring practice and the full speed 11 on 11 body reps, if you will, on some of these things. But, my biggest concern right now is the health and well-being of our players, the nutrition of them, finishing strong academically with their finals going on right now, and then making sure that they have a place to work out and stay in shape. But as far as the X's and O's go, I'm not real concerned because we had so much time to install and walk through offense and defense in January and February, and then obviously 8 hours a week with Zoom and the technology that we have right now with coordinators and position coaches being able to share video and telestrate on the screen, if you will, and so it's gone as smoothly as I could have hoped. And really the one thing we're missing is those 15 practices of the full speed 11 on 11 reps.
One of the things that's come out of this is all the different scenarios out there. I know, Big 12 coaches are talking about it. ADs are talking about it. Other power conferences, same sort of thing. How much attention do you pay to those? How much do you try to game plan, I guess, as to, hey, if we have, this happen, if we come back in September instead of August, if we have conference only, like the Pac-12 is talking about, all these sorts of things, if you have a split schedule, like Bob Bowlesby's talked about. I mean, do you say, is that too far away, or you have like plans A, B, C, D, E?
Yeah, it's that part of it is too far away. What the season is going to look like, that's way too far. We're worried about right now is June 1. All the Power 5 commissioners and conferences, they got together in late March and agreed on a bunch of different stipulations in terms of what we can and can't do with our players. But that was set through May 31st. Well, we're getting pretty close to May 31st. So, every state has different laws. Our state just opened gyms. So does that mean we can open the weight room doors on June 1st for our players, even though it's discretionary, or because some other state in our conference cannot? Are we bound by the lowest common denominator? So those decisions are being made well above my head, by ADs and university presidents and commissioners, and first and foremost, government health officials, telling us what is acceptable and appropriate and what isn't. So I think the biggest thing, the NCAA said that we can't meet with our players during finals. So we're kind of these last week and this week, this week and part of next week. We haven't met a whole lot, but starting Wednesday of next week, we'll resume meetings with our players, starting on Wednesday the 20th. And, we've got contingency plans based on a lot of different scenarios that could happen June 1st. But as far as what the season looks like, I think the only thing that we've kind of all, and when I say all of us in the Big 12 and really most of the Power 5 conferences have agreed on, is that we're going to need 6 weeks. Whenever you tell us we're going to start the season, whatever that season looks like, we're going to need at least 6 weeks prior to that to have the first 2 weeks kind of be an assessment, medical assessment of our players and see where they're at from a physical conditioning standpoint, and then slowly, spend 2 weeks kind of slowly getting them acclimated, and then have a training camp, and then go play the season. But whether it starts later, starts on time, 12 games, 9 games, fans, no fans, split season, spring season, I think it's way too early to tell. Again, we're really just focused on, what are we going to be able to do with our players come June 1.
During this time, you've been active with various charities in the Austin area, Central Texas Food Bank, the Front Steps Homeless Shelter.
Hey, Chuck, I apologize. My headphones went out. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. I love technology. No, during this time, you've been very, with fundraising and donations for various charities, the Central Texas Food Bank and the Front Steps Homeless Shelter, and I think about 3 or 4 others in Austin. And I guess what prompted you and Michelle to take those steps to go forward, and what's it meant to you on a personal level to be involved?
Well, to be honest with you, there wasn't much prompting needed. I think, these are things that Michelle and I had done in the past that we try to lead as private a life as possible. It's something that, we believe in, that we're fortunate enough to have resources to be able to help others that don't. And I think probably the biggest catalyst for us, at least letting the world know what we're doing, is to try to encourage others to do the same, in this extreme time of need. And that was, so we weren't prompted by anything. We're still helping the same causes that we've always helped. It was a matter of, trying to get the word out to all of Longhorn Nation and really the whole country to help these organizations that are in dire need at this point. And like you said, yeah, personally, my father died in a homeless shelter when he was 52 years old, and he struggled with addiction issues, and we weren't going to save him. So if we can help maybe save somebody else's dad, then we're going to feel pretty good about that. And then obviously, you look at the the food bank and Meals on Wheels, you know, they usually spend, you know, we toured on Tuesday, the facility they have down in Southeast Austin. And, you know, what a massive facility. And the CEO, Derek Chubbs, told me, you know, in a normal week, they spend about $25,000 a week on food. They're spending $250,000 a week on food right now just to feed Central Texas alone. And so that is a strain on them and their resources that is unimaginable. And then the Safe Alliance, you know, I witnessed some domestic abuse in my childhood. My wife has friends that have been victims of domestic abuse. So we felt like, you know, obviously with, you know, people being quarantined and, you know, stuck in the same house, that, you know, that all the statistics say that the rate of domestic violence has risen during these times because of that. And we wanted to make sure that the people that are supporting them had the resources to do so. In fact, we had a little special gift for them on Mother's Day, which was kind of cool. And then the Boys and Girls Club. Well, one, the emergency fund that President Fenves set up obviously was near and dear to our hearts, because the student population of the University of Texas is our lifeblood, and they're our biggest supporters. So in this time of need, we wanted to help them. And then the Boys and Girls Club, you know, I was a club kid myself growing up. My mom worked her tail off, but needed, you know, a place to send me after school and in the summer times. And the Boys and Girls Club was always there for me in my youth. And we wanted to make sure that they had the resources to provide the same kind of education and nourishment that they provided me, you know, 35 years ago.
Don't want to get you into trouble on this, but so feel free to take the fifth if you want. But is there a favorite restaurant or restaurants, either in Austin or on the road when you're recruiting, this and is on your list to definitely hit as soon as we get back to some kind of normalcy?
Boy, favorite restaurant in Austin is there's so many good ones. It would take too long to I literally don't have a favorite. There's so many good ones, you know, downtown and around Austin. You know, the one on the road that I love is in Houston, El Tiempo. I think it's the best fajitas in Houston, and I'm a big fajita guy. So I love El Tiempo out there in Houston. Cyclone Anayas is also great. When we lived in Houston, great fajitas. You know, here in town, you know, we've I mean, you name it, we've tried it, and everything downtown to out here to Maudie's to you know, all of the above. I mean, whether you're in the suburbs or downtown, Austin's got some unbelievable food.
Now you're in the office, you're on Zoom calls, like you said, for about 12 hours a day. You're waiting for calls from recruits, but okay, you go home. There's only so much football you can do. What's it been like for you? Have you developed any new hobbies? What's it like having that quality time with the family? You know, you know, have things changed a little bit for you?
Oh, certainly, yeah. And we're not in the office, so I'm home all day.
Oh, that's right.
I'm in the home office, certainly, and you try to tell your wife and kids, hey, pretend I'm not here, but that never works. So I usually get interrupted from time to time, but I think the evenings have been particularly special in terms of, you know, I think we're going on, I don't even know how many, a couple weeks in a row at least, of all five of us sitting down to a family dinner. You know, I in all of the years combined, added up, I don't know that we've you know, had, you know, 14 days just because of the the kids' different schedules, my different schedule, Michelle's different schedule. And so that's been really, really important. And then after dinner, if there's not more recruiting calls to make, we try to have a family game night or family movie night. So we'll I've played more Uno than you can imagine. Monopoly, the game of life, Jenga, we played the other night. That was fun. Cornhole, ping pong. You see the ping pong table behind me. And then, we alternate, the kids get to pick the movie or the parents get to pick the movie. And, usually when the parents pick the movie, it's something that meant something to Michelle and I growing up that maybe our kids hadn't seen. Our kids hadn't seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They hadn't seen The Breakfast Club. They hadn't seen Top Gun. They hadn't seen, some of these movies that kind of shaped us growing up that we wanted to expose them to. Now they kind of grit their teeth and fight through it a little bit. It's not, Caddyshack's not near as funny to my 12-year-old son as it was to me back in the day, but I'll be damned if he's going to grow up not having watched Caddyshack.
How has the adjustment gone to the, I hate this phrase because I've heard it so much, but the new normal in recruiting here? I mean, we've heard about virtual recruiting. Kids obviously aren't taking visits, that sort of thing. You've had the dead period extended. So what kind of adjustments have you and your staff made to that? And I guess it spills over even to grad transfers. I mean, the spring would have been the prime time for those guys to take visits and look at campuses and all that.
Yeah, I think, one, we've got a greater appreciation for FaceTime and Zoom and the actual, I don't know that had this not happened that we would have utilized those face-to-face interactions. We rely on text and old school phone calls a lot, where it's neat to be able to see these kids face to face. I know it's not in the flesh, but it's as close as we can get. So that's been good, and that's a change that will probably last well beyond the pandemic. And then I think it's just constant communication. We've got virtual unofficial visits. Where we'll get a kid on Zoom and he'll have an opportunity to watch videos, some promotional videos on our different departments, and then talk to Brett Wohlers, the head of our academics, talk to Kevin Washington, the head of our player development department, and the guy that leads our Forever Texas series, our Life After Football series. And they talk to Coach McKnight, and they talk to me, and parents get involved. And so that's the best we got right now, right? Is to be able to get as creative as we can be virtually and get these kids and their parents and the key people in their lives that are going to help them make this decision feel as comfortable as they can, with us and our program.
A question from reader Diego, who Texas fan, wants to know, how much did you get done with what you wanted to get done with Mike Yursich and Chris Ash stepping in as your new coordinators? How much is left to be done in terms of that going forward?
Again, prior to everything shutting down, we had pretty much normal down and distance, normal field zone, offense and defense installed mentally. We went back and reinstalled it. I know we introduced, because you're going to run out of things to meet about at some point, right? So we introduced some third down and red zone stuff on both sides of the ball, some specialty situations, if you will. Again, the mental aspect of it is not a huge concern of mine. Our kids are going to know this offense and this defense like the back of their hand mentally. It's going out and physically doing it that, we're going to have to accelerate that learning curve as soon as we get them back.
At a place like Texas, changing one coordinator is a big deal. Changing two is perceived, at least, as a really big deal. Coming off the season you did, what made you decide that I've really got to make these changes?
Well, I think it all started offensively, that I had become a jack of all trades and master of none, that there are just so many things that tug at you as the head coach at the University of Texas, that to be the best play caller that I could be, it was difficult for me to find the time to really dive into that. And I was burning the candle at both ends. And obviously I'm involved in the offensive game plan, and our previous offensive staff, that the guys that are no longer here did a phenomenal job when I wasn't there. But being the primary play caller on game day requires so much more added time and film study that it was taking me away from. Then the second part was, managing the defensive side. Obviously, we did not perform to our expectations defensively, and so to hire a guy who I've admired from afar for a long time, and Mike Yursich, and his offenses, that was a big recruit for us, because there were plenty of, I don't want to name names, but there was plenty of schools out there that, Power 5 big time jobs that had offensive coordinator openings, that he chose to come to Texas because he believed in, what we're doing. He believed in the vision, and he believed in our ability to win championships here. And then Chris was a no-brainer. Again, Chris had numerous offers, whether it be in Power 5 or even the NFL. And I knew just this will be our third spot working together at Iowa State, then Ohio State. We won a national championship together as coordinators there. And then, I think his 3+ years as a head coach, he now has a great idea of what it means to sit in this chair. And he's done a great job of being the head coach of the defense. So we underperformed on both sides of the ball at times. You look statistically, we were, I think, a top 15 offense, and we did some really good things offensively. Obviously had the leading receiver in the country in the regular season. Sam Ehlinger had statistically one of the best seasons in the history of Texas football. But we bogged down at times, and so the only way I knew how to fix it is to look at myself as the leader of this organization. How do we get to where we all believe that we're headed? And don't get me wrong, Chuck. I mean, the trajectory is right where we thought it would be, coming in when we came in. And 2018, to be honest with you, was probably our kids played well above expectations. But we've now got a 4-year starter at quarterback, a potential first rounder at left tackle, from a signing class that was ranked 31st in the country or something like that. So we've done a good job developing those guys. And then obviously having the class of 18 and class of 19, two classes that were top 5 classes, now be, mature guys that have been in the system, that have been with Coach McKnight and have gotten bigger, faster, stronger. I think, although we might have hit a bit of a dip, I think it's pretty easy to see that the trajectory, the long-term trajectory, is headed in the right direction.
Another reader asked, and I think you could probably anticipate this question coming from somebody on the internet, but he wants to know, is Texas back? And I guess to flesh that out, what's it like being at a school where that takes on a life of its own because Texas is Texas. There aren't that many schools where people kind of expect national prominence year in and year out. It might be aspirational, it might be a hope. At Texas, it's it's expected. It seems to be. And what's that like? I mean, you were aware of Texas.
Yeah, when you win, it's not by enough, or you didn't use the right people, or call the right plays, and God forbid you lose a game. It's the sky is falling. But I get it. I mean, that's what we signed up for. But no, we don't ever use the term back. I don't know what back is. Back means that you've settled. That you're not striving for anything beyond that. And so I don't know the definition of back. Because our goal, our big picture goal is always to compete for championships in the month of November and December. And, we feel like we're on our way to doing that. We did that in just our second year here. And, we've beaten 2 top 10 teams, 1 top 5 team, and some pretty big time bowl games. So we've got to work out some of the kinks that had us stub our toe a few times too many last year. But in terms of us being in the national discussion, yeah, I think we're like I said, I think the trajectory is there, but we'll never internally use that phrase back. I mean, I don't know I don't know how to define it, and B, to me, it means like you're settling for something. Every year we're going to keep trying to do this. So I don't know what that question means. I hope I answered it sufficiently, though.
No, that's fine. And another question here, and again, not trying to offer a negative statistic, but everybody in the Big 12 knows that Oklahoma has won 5 straight conference titles. I guess
we're well aware. Yes.
What's it going to take to knock Oklahoma off? And I guess just from the standpoint of a competitor looking at your rival, does that grate on you at all? I mean, the history of that rivalry as well as anybody.
Oh, sure, it grates on us. I mean, it would grate on us and myself if it were anybody in our conference had won it 5 years in a row, and it wasn't us. But to have it be your 100 and some odd year rival, across the state line, yeah, that it certainly sticks in your craw a little bit. To answer the first part of the question, what is it going to take? They've had really good teams. They've got really good coaches. They've had, 2 number 1 picks at quarterback, back-to-back years, as well as a second-round pick this past year. So we all know how important that position is in all levels of football, and they've done a phenomenal job of recruiting and developing that position. And we beat them in the regular season. Couldn't pull off the second part of that, which was beating them in the conference championship game. But there's no moral victories at Texas, especially when it comes to that school. But again, considering where we started, I think we played them admirably, and obviously have beaten them once in 3 years. And so what's it going to take? It's going to take a continued effort to recruit elite talent, and then to develop that talent, and then hopefully one of these days they'll stop having 1st and 2nd round draft picks at quarterback. But we played draft picks. I mean, that's certainly not an excuse at all. But we played draft picks at quarterback, especially in this league, damn near every week. But those 3 guys they've had in the last 3 years were special. I mean, really, really special. And so we feel like, again, that we're building something here that is sustainable. And, that rivalry is going to be on a national perspective. I still think it's the greatest rivalry in all of college sports because of the venue, because of the two states, because of the history of it. And, we've got to do our part in making sure that, we win some more of those battles.
Well, I guess, what do you know now that you are familiar with Texas from your time as a assistant under Mac Brown, but what do you know now that maybe you didn't know when you were introduced at that press conference on the 9th floor of Belmont 4 years ago?
Oh, well, I didn't know, when you take these kind of jobs, you take them sight unseen. So I didn't have a grasp at how far behind our competitors we were from a facility standpoint. And my hat's off to Chris Delcani and Greg Clenvis for understanding that, realizing that, and going out and raising the money to rectify that. And we'll have the finest facility in the country in fall of 2021. What else didn't I didn't know. I lived in Austin for 2 years, and that was as a graduate assistant. I had to live in Austin on $400 a month, which wasn't easy, So I think on a positive note, I always knew what a great city Austin was, but never had been exposed to as much as I've been exposed. What a remarkable city this is. To live in and raise a family. So that was certainly a pleasant surprise. And then, I think those are probably the two biggest things that I know now that I didn't know then. One kind of on the, hey, we got holy cow, we got an issue here. And the other one being, holy cow, this is awesome.
And if you have to peel away at any point to realize you probably have calls, you've got a full schedule, but going to go down to some, on the field stuff, run through this real quickly. But I guess beginning with quarterback with Sam, it seems like he's the sort of guy, and there are always a few each season in college football who seem like they've played more than 4 years, around forever at their particular school. And I guess people, not know about Sam Ehlinger, that you've seen behind the scenes, that you've witnessed coaching him, that people still maybe don't get about?
The guy's been on the cover of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, Sports Illustrated. There's been 1,000 articles written on him. I don't know that I'm going to enlighten your audience much more than they already have been. But, I've been around some really, really powerful leaders in my coaching experience. And, but there's always been this kind of, there's, if these guys were 5 stars, maybe these 2 or 3 were 6 stars, if you will, from a leadership standpoint. And, Landon Roberts, our middle linebacker at Houston, falls into that category. He's a starting middle linebacker for the Patriots now as a 7th round pick. JT Barrett certainly falls into that category, and Sam Ehlinger falls into that category for me. His ability to relate to and get the most out of so many different demographics of players on our team, because again, the kids on our team, there's 115 kids on our team. They all come from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different parts of the country, different interests, different everything. And, he could be, he could put a dip in and go fishing with a few old linemen on one day, and the very next day, take the DBs and receivers to jambalaya. The hip hop music festival and nobody blink an eye. And, just his ability to cross all of those boundaries, and his leadership style has been phenomenal to be a part of. And my biggest regret is that he's got to spend his senior year dressing in the visitors' locker room because of this construction. Now, I'm certainly very proud of the fact that we're getting a first-class facility, but I wish for everything that he's done for this university and for this program and for the city of Austin. My biggest wish that'll never get granted is he won't have an opportunity to enjoy that as a player at the University of Texas. But, as we always do in the off season, we have a corner of our locker room set out for NFL players that come back to Austin to train in the off season. So, he'll get to use it. It'll just be when he's in the NFL rather than wearing the burnt orange.
Another position question on the offense. I mean, last year you had depth problems at running back.
I would say, yeah.
you were playing a converted freshman quarterback there who was pretty darn good. But I was going to say now with Keanu Ingram back, Roshan Johnson, Daniel Young, and a recruit who's creating an awful lot of buzz coming in, one of the top running backs in the country. How do you look at that position group now, and what's your comfort level?
Well, if we stay healthy, it's as good. It's as healthy as it's been in years here, right? We think Keontae Ingram's an NFL player. We think Roshan Johnson's an NFL player. We think Bijan Robinson has superstar written all over him. And then Danny Young is a great team guy and has his role in that position group. So the one thing, we're a scholarship short there. You'd like to carry 5 on scholarship. We've got 4 when Bijan comes in. We tried to sign 2 in last year's class. Was really difficult when the second guy is looking across and saying, well, you're signing the number 1 running back in the country, and he's going to be my age, so that was difficult. So we'll sign 2 this year and we'll see if, what the future holds for Keontae in terms of him coming back for his senior year or not. But feel as good as we ever have at that position, considering, where we started to where we are now, in terms of the quality and quantity of depth that we have there. And, knock on wood, we got to make sure those guys stay healthy.
And another reader question, you look at the top, national contenders around the country. One consistent quality with all those is the offensive line, having the big, strong, mean guys up front. It's taken a while for you to, I guess, rebuild that. I mean, you mentioned Sam Cosby's being a possible first-round draft pick. You've got, multiple year starters at most positions coming back. I was just wondering, how close are you to where you want to be with, having the offensive line set? Because, going back to Ohio State, what having that kind of offensive line means to an entire football team.
Yeah, I mean, our first year there, even the players that we inherited at Ohio State, I think, 3 of them were drafted. And then obviously you move into the Taylor Deckers of the world who were, we recruited and wound up being a first rounder. We also had a guy named Ezekiel Elliott back there that was pretty good at covering up some deficiencies if we had any in the offensive line. So no, we feel really good. We're returning 3 starters in Cosme, Angulau, and Kerstetter. Kerstetter will be a 4-year starter. Was kind of thrown into the fire as a true freshman and played admirably. But he's developed fine, to the point where we feel like, he'll get an opportunity to play in the NFL too. And then the young guys have really been developed not only by Coach Han, but by Coach McKnight. That's such a developmental position. Very rarely do you see freshmen or redshirt freshmen or true sophomores, starting at that position. And unfortunately, we've had to. But that is we'll reap the benefits of that this year with Cosme being a 3-year starter and Kerstetter being a 4-year starter, Angulau being a 2-year starter. And then, we feel like we'll have some pretty good position battles for those other 2 spots.
Shifting to the defense here, you're going to the 4-man front with Chris Ash or a variation of the 4-man front with, edge rushers. Going to have Joseph Asai moving from linebacker to being one of those, the jack position for you guys. What's your level of expectation for what that 4-man front can deliver, especially when you look at what it did in the bowl game and what's the ceiling for a guy like Joseph Asai as a pass rusher?
Well, yeah, I think, the biggest thing, especially in our conference, is you gotta, sacks are an overrated statistic in my opinion, because the ball in today's game, the ball gets out so quickly. But you've got to make quarterbacks feel uncomfortable, and you've got to disrupt them. You got to hit them. You got to bat passes down the whole 9. And so we just felt like playing, on the edges of offensive linemen gives us an opportunity to do that with our front guys rather than having to generate pass rushes from blitzing linebackers or safeties. And so, we feel like in this league, again, with all the RPOs, sacks again may or may not come. Who knows? But we do know that we feel like we're going to have a much better presence in terms of affecting the quarterbacks and making them uncomfortable. And then you asked about the ceiling for Joe. How high is he going to go up? This is a kid that came in at 210 pounds. He's 255 pounds now. He's put on, 40 some odd pounds of lean muscle. He's dropped his body fat percentage by 3 or 4%. He's the best pass rusher we've got. He's a very twitchy athlete. He's a great leader. The sky is, I don't want to say literally because that word is literally used out of context and improperly quite frequently, but figuratively, the sky is the limit for him. He's got a very, very high ceiling for sure.
Looking at your secondary, which on paper looks like your most talented groups, a bunch of guys who came in with, top recruits, guys with all kinds of athletic ability, hasn't really come together necessarily, maybe because of injuries, maybe because of other things, but how do you look at that group? And do you see those guys now kind of stepping up now that they've been on campus for a couple of years?
Oh yeah. If there's one position that we have recruited at a level at or above even anybody else in the country, in my opinion, has been in the defensive backfield. There's going to be some big time battles, for playing time and starting jobs. You look at even just our corners, you look at the 2 deep and you're talking about Jalen Green, Deshaun Jamison, Josh Thompson, Kenyatta Watson. These are, very highly recruited guys that anybody in the country would be proud to have. And then you go to the safeties, in 2018, we signed the number 1, number 2, number 3 safety in the country. And then the very next year we signed a 5-star in Tyler Owens. And, let's not forget, especially in this league, we'll be in nickel personnel most of the time. So, Chris Adamora and Anthony Cook will battle for that position. But you look in the back end specifically, you're talking about Caden Stearns, BJ Foster, Chris Brown, Tyler Owens, the list goes on and on. That the old adage is, iron sharpens iron. And our goal is to get every position group to that level of depth and talent to where, every day at practice is a battle that, these guys are making each other better just because they're pushing each other.
Are you still looking for maybe a little help, that depth at linebacker in the grad transfer market, or where's comfort level, I guess, looking at the linebacker right now?
Yeah, I think it's the most nerve-wracking position from a depth standpoint on our team right now. We feel good about the move of DeMarvion Overshawn, but obviously he's inexperienced there. We feel like Juwan Mitchell has in spurts showed us that he can play at a championship level. Excited to see about David Benda. Deli Adeoye, Marcus Tillman are both coming off injuries, so they've been very diligent in their rehab. But Marcus Tillman was a guy that was certainly turning heads before he got hurt, as well as Deli. Deli had started a few games for us as well. So, but they're all young and inexperienced, and so if we can find a grad transfer at that position that we feel like can help us win a championship, we'll certainly take a look at that. We've had quite a bit of success over the years with grad transfers coming in, but we also feel like we've got a great linebacker coach in Coleman Hutzler, and that if we don't, it's not the end of the world. That the guys that we have on our roster currently will be developed to the point that they'll be an asset rather than a liability.
Just a couple quick questions here, if you have the time. If not, I fully understand, but just kind of wrapping it up, you have?
Yeah, I got a few more minutes.
Okay. You made a one-day trip to South Bend to visit with Brian Kelly. And I guess when you look at Notre Dame and Texas, you see some similarities in terms of, the tradition and the media coverage and the fan expectations. I mean, there aren't too many programs that are on that when you put it all that. Heck, both of you guys even have your own network when you think about it. So I guess, what was your takeaway? What did you bring out of that meeting with Brian Kelly in terms of, I guess, just sitting down with some guy who's kind of, he's been a head coach for a little longer than you have, but, what was the takeaway on that?
Well, a lot longer than I have. I mean, you way back to Grand Valley State, right, in Central Michigan and Cincinnati, and then Notre Dame. So, he went through a coaching transition, much like we did. He had the luxury. I call it a luxury. I mean, the year that he made a few changes on his staff, they were 4-8. They didn't go to a bowl game, so he had that whole month of December and January to kind of hire his new staff and onboard them in terms of the expectations of their culture. We were getting ready to play the number 10 team in the country, on New Year's Eve. So that made December and January pretty hectic for myself. But I think the biggest takeaway was, one that, and some guys are built differently, and some guys have different responsibilities. There are head coaches out there that call the offense and call the defense and do a really good job of it. But if you're going to do that, you better make sure that you have the time to devote to do that, and that you have the support system on the other sides of the ball that you can, kind of step away, if you will. And so I think the biggest thing was, the takeaway was, one, hire coordinators that you believe in and that you trust, and then get out of that offensive meeting room from time to time and build your relationships with your players, and then make sure you're doing as good a job overseeing the entire enterprise of Texas football from a 30,000-foot view rather than a play caller view. But it was very helpful, and it's something, Chuck, that maybe your audience may or may not know. But I mean, we take professional development trips every year. Sometimes staffs or coaches come to us. Sometimes we go other places. So it's not uncommon for coaches to go, share best practices, if you will, with each other. And I'm certainly grateful for Coach Kelly and the time that he spent with me.
You couldn't escape this chat without a question about the famous or infamous binder that that's taken on a life of its own. I guess from your standpoint, how do you weigh analytics in terms of on-field decisions, especially on fourth down, versus just a gut feeling as to how the game's going at that point and what you need?
Yeah, surprisingly, I think we've got to be better on fourth down, right? In 2018, we were phenomenal, one of the best teams in the country.
80%, I think.
Yeah, something like that. And last year we weren't. So we got to have a better fourth down plan. What a lot of people probably don't realize is I'm actually more conservative than the binder would even say. That the binder tells you go for it, and I'm like, no, I'll kick the field goal or punt at this point. So I know that it's the old hindsight is 2020, right? I mean, the fans are clamoring for us to use and incorporate analytics more in our sport, but yet when you do and the outcome isn't what was desired, then it's what the heck are we doing? Why are we doing that? So hindsight's always 2020. You got a lot of people on couches that don't know the intricacies of the binder. A lot of people don't even realize that the binder changes every week based on our level of success in different areas of the field and in different distances, as well as the opponent that we're playing. It even takes into condition. I mean, we don't get the final weekly binder until Friday before the game or Thursday before the game, because it takes into account weather conditions as well. It's very, very well thought out, and it's been a huge help for me. But a lot of it is what I already knew, right? I mean, kicking a goal from the 2-yard line, as good a kicker as we have, the risk reward of going for it, especially inside the 5-yard line or inside your own red zone, for an opportunity for 7 points weighed against the missed opportunity of 3 points, but also giving your opponent 98 yards to have to drive the field to score the 7 points to make up for it. The math makes absolute perfect sense. Now there are times, again, when the binder says go for it, where I have said, no, that's not what I want to do here, and so we don't. But I love the use of analytics. We use it all the time, and all of the data that we compile from the little GPS chip that the kids wear when they train and in their shoulder pads. We analyze that data every single day and formulate practice schedules and workload capacities for different players based on that data. So we're knee deep in the analytics of it, and at times, it's the analytics in baseball. It might tell you, hey, this guy's got a 3-0 count, but versus this pitcher and with this hitter and on the streak that he's on, give him the green light to swing away, and he swings away and he misses and he winds up striking out. Well, do you not want to use the analytics, or do you want to use the analytics? Sometimes the outcome isn't always in your favor, but we have definitely embraced the use of analytics for sure.
And one thing that came up on another one of your chats, I think it was the Orange Bloods chat with it. Michelle just isn't a coach's wife. She knows the game real well. I was just curious on some of these calls that you make, some of the gambles there on fourth down. Do you hear about that? She loves it. She loves it when we score touchdowns.
Oh, Tom, man, that was awesome when you went for it on fourth down in the Sugar Bowl. Up by whatever you were up, and imposed your will on them and made the lead insurmountable. I got a lot of kudos from Michelle on that one. And then when you don't get it, it's like, what are you doing? You've got Cameron Dicker over here, one of the nation's best kicker. That was crazy. What are you doing? So she's just like the rest of them. Hindsight's always 20/20, but she definitely knows more than the average fan for sure.
And last question here, and really appreciate your time. I know our readers do as well. Just a gut feeling here, and we won't hold you to that, but come Labor Day weekend, are we going to play football? Are we going to see college football out there?
Honestly, Chuck, my gut tells me I don't know. You posed it as Labor Day weekend. That part I don't know. Are we going to play football? My gut tells me yes. For a lot of different reasons. The country needs it. Our students need it. Our fan base needs it. I go back to all of the major tragedies that this country has endured. And sports has always been the thing that has unified us and taken our minds off of whatever catastrophe that we're dealing with. And, it bears repeating. I'll never forget where I was when President Bush threw out the first pitch after 9/11 in Yankee Stadium, and the crowd was cheering USA, USA. I mean, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it, and to now say we've got this absolute catastrophe that's hurting so many people, not just physically, but economically. And one of the biggest things that causes this catastrophe is cramming 100,000 people into a stadium and having a bunch of athletes, sweating and bleeding and spitting on each other, and so that's been the hard part to digest, is that we don't have sports to divert us from the bad things that are going on in our lives. But I do, in my heart of hearts, in my gut, I feel like we're going to play college football this season. What that looks like, Chuck, your guess is as good as mine. But there's a lot of different scenarios. There's a lot of really smart people working on that. But I do believe that you'll see some form of college football this fall.
I'll give you the final word if you just want to close this out. If you want to say anything to the and readers out there or whatever during this time, Tom. But, I know this has been a great, 1 hour, much longer than you promised, so we appreciate that. But, the ball's in your court.
Well, one, I would encourage everybody to give what they can. As bad as your situation is, there's probably somebody, not probably, there's guaranteed somebody that's in a worse situation than you. And it doesn't always have to be money. What do we have an abundance of right now? We have time, right? So go out, go volunteer at the food bank. I saw Kirk Bowles at the food bank, his church, every Tuesday. They've got a men's Bible study that they go volunteer to, pack boxes at the Central Texas Food Bank. So that was great to see him there. But that doesn't cost anything. That's we've all got time, and we've all got a voice. And even if it's supporting and tweeting about or Instagramming about these different causes that are in tremendous crisis right now, that need our support. I think it's important for us to help our community in any way that we can. And I think, to stay positive. That's one thing Texas fans have a hard time doing at times, but is to stay positive. We're going to get through this together. We're building a championship level program that everybody can be proud of. But we're going to need everybody's support and everybody's positive energy in order to do that. And then I would say probably the last thing I want to tell your readers and your audience is make sure if you see somebody that's out there on the front lines that are putting their lives on the line to protect ours, whether it be hospital workers, public safety workers, and policemen or firefighters, to the guy that's working at Home Depot or you know, loading shelves at HEB. I mean, those are all people that aren't afforded the luxury that we are to stay quarantined, and they've got to literally put their own health at risk to make sure that we can survive. And so let's make sure just a simple thank you goes a long way when you come in contact with those kind of people.
Some good stuff. Hey, thanks very much for taking the time, Tom. I appreciate it. I know Morning News does, and all the readers out there, whether they're Texas fans, Oklahoma fans, A&M fans. I'd even ask you about the A&M series, so you escaped on that one. So, but thanks again. Really appreciate this.
All right, Chuck, I appreciate you having me, man. Hook 'em horns.